Away we go. Okay, I think we should probably start to get underway here. Welcome all. Those of you who know me know that from time to time, I like to bring together these kinds of gatherings of people who have been my undergraduate students here who've gone on to various aspects of life relating to law. And so this is one such episode, and it really spans an extraordinary period of my life and everybody's life. I'm embarrassed to say how long I've known some of these folks. But in any event, I welcome all to this. I think this is going to be a very interesting exchange here with people with very widely differing kinds of experiences and life plans and life trajectories. And so the first thing that I would like to do, though, is to have our two student organization presidents introduce themselves and say something about their organizations and whatever future plans they might want to announce for this. So let's first go to Jenna.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenna Asmar. I'm a senior at Wayne State. I'm studying marketing in the business school, so I have not had a chance to have a class with Dr. Roth, and I probably won't, which is sad. I'm the president of the Pre-Law Student Association, and we have about 200 members. That's on our email list. Not every member is like super active, but for those that are, I hope that they get like a lot out of the org. We have a lot of lawyers come and speak. We do a lot of LSAT events and how to apply to law school. And the thing that we have next for our organization is merch. Actually, we're working on a sweatshirt design. And then after that, we're thinking of going to a soup kitchen to donate some of our time around Thanksgiving. So yeah.
Okay. Devin Reynolds.
Hi, everyone. My name is Devin Reynolds. I'm president of the Political Science Students Association. I am a junior at Wayne State, and I have had 3 classes with Dr. Roth. I'm currently in my 3rd. A little bit about the Political Science Student Association. I organized a couple events so far, primarily focusing on special topic panels, career-related panels, and in like 2 weeks, I'm hosting an event with Professor Kevin Deacon Krause and co-hosting it with Honors and the international programs about his recent research about democracy in Central and Eastern Europe. And then I'm trying to organize another panel with former graduate students, and they'll talk about their experiences in graduate school. So a lot of those types of events. And then if anyone's interested in joining the PSSA from the Pre-Law Student Association, feel free to reach out to me. I'll drop my email in the chat, but as far as that goes, I hand it off to Dr. Roth.
Okay. Well, I don't know whether I should really be introducing people in the order in which I met them, which would have the Honorable Wesley Person as the first of the folks here. But perhaps we would do best to go in alphabetical order so people can follow along. So we have Myrna Haidar, who is here from New York City, from the Legal Aid Society, and she went on from our undergraduate program to CUNY Law School, and can tell us about that. Amy was Amy Driscoll when I knew her. Molche, is that how you pronounce?
Mulcahy.
Okay. And so she has gone on to Wayne State Law School from the Wayne State undergraduate program, and then to a career in with various enterprises and employment litigation counsel for Paylocity in Grand Rapids. And then we have Jason Pearsall, who who I knew first as an undergrad a long time ago, and then as a law student, now a fairly long time ago. But Jason has had probably the most atypical career of anyone you'll hear from today, a career largely in business. And so we'll hear about the applicability of law to that. Wesley is our resident member of the judiciary from Recorder's Court in Georgia. And so we will get to hear about that career trajectory. He went on from here to Mercer University Law School in Georgia and has made his career there. And finally, Anna Yaldo, who went on from Wayne State's undergraduate program at the University of Michigan Law School, but also for a master's in social work at the University of Michigan, and who now is on the front lines of everything in the public defender's office in El Paso, Texas. So what I'd like to just have you do in alphabetical order is to go around and start talking a little bit about, you know, what your current career is, what your trajectory has been since leaving here. Some of you have had a long trajectory since leaving here, and some of relatively recent vintage. But I leave it to you to what you want to say about yourselves. But Mirna, why don't you go ahead?
So thank you so much for having me. My name is Mirna. I go by they and she. I think I took one class with you, Professor Roth, and that was hard. So I like chapeau bas for someone who took more than one class. I appreciate that a lot. So just quickly, I am not a native English speaker. English is my third language, and something that I wish I knew before that, you know, as someone maybe who, you know, didn't study in the US, I was a refugee when I was taking a Professor Roth class, is that I wish people told me a little bit more what law school would look like a little bit more like practically. Like, for example, someone recommended the book Getting to Maybe. I don't know how people feel about that book, but really it helped me a lot because I often felt like there's no real answer in law. And it really helped me cope with that, you know, kind of dilemma. It's like, actually, that's how you would work in law school, is you need to get to a maybe, not either yes or no answer. And then the biggest thing is the bar exam, which I really wish I took more classes that were structured around MBE questions, which is multiple choice. Because as someone who didn't grow up here, and again, English is my third language, I really struggled a lot with multiple choice. You're never going to use it after the bar, but I really I like reflecting back on that journey. I wish someone did tell me, you know, to take a class. I avoided them, you know, because I've never done them in my life, and I regretted it when I took the bar. So that's really like kind of quickly. I would love to answer questions for my background, but just quickly what I currently do. I've always been leaning towards criminal defense for purposes of my abolitionist views of, you know, that people who do harm do not belong in prisons. But also this particular unit I'm part of, which is PRDU, is called Parole Revocation Defense Unit. And what we do is, I'm sure you've heard of Rikers Island in New York. It's nothing like you think of as, like, you know, it's not an island where you go drink and have fun and sit. It's an island where awful things happen to our client. Since the pandemic happened, we have about 19 people who have died just because of the circumstances. No good food, no good hygiene, no good medicine, nothing. And what we do is we support people who have been revoked on parole. And just briefly, I don't want to assume people knew this. I didn't know this even until my last semester of law school. When you have a criminal charge and you're serving in prison, you get released, early release, and then they usually give you parole conditions, and you are on parole sentence for a certain amount of years or whatever. And there are very strict conditions about that. And they're usually very strict, like they can tell you where to live, who to see, who not to see, and it could be completely arbitrary. So what we do is, once the parole officers decide that they've violated one of these conditions, they get to issue a warrant and they revoke them. And then what happens is immediately they're arrested and taken to Rikers. And that's where we get them as our clients and we represent them when we defend the charges against them. And it's a hot mess for many reasons, which I'm happy to go into details for someone. I'll put my email in the chat. If you're interested in that career path, we can always chat on one-on-one. But in short, that's it. I have 2 babies. They keep me busy while practicing. Yeah, if you're a parent, you want to connect, I'm happy to connect. If you're someone whose English is not your first language, I'm happy as well to connect. So, and I look forward to hearing from other people. Thank you.
Right. Amy, you're up.
Yeah, I think I'm next. So as Professor Roth mentioned, I was a Wayne State undergrad and law student. Coming out of law school, I practiced in property tax litigation for a few 3 or 4 year period until I went in-house. I really found, for me, like that in-house space was where I enjoyed practice of law the most. So I started at a bank and I really focused on litigation while I was there until a need arose in the employment space. And that was always a space during law school I was particularly interested in, but you'll find as you go through this path, if you do, that it's not always your choosing. When you get out, even to a law firm, you're sort of part of a group of students, and it's, you know, who has work, what departments or what groups, what practices have work for you. So, you know, I was lucky that my path led me to a space I was really interested in and passionate about, and that really is where I've developed my career over the last 10 years or so. So I was at the bank for quite a while, and I had an opportunity to come to Grand Rapids to Gordon Food Service. Some of you might know the stores from around town. But they were a 118-year-old company at the time that had never had an in-house legal department. And so it was actually fun. We had the law team there was comprised of all Wayne State grads at the time. So we like to tout that. And it was really fun to be able to build what we, you know, what we saw a legal department being in an organization and really partnering with the business. I've actually just recently left that role to join Paylocity as employment and litigation counsel there. And I've really made that shift because the employment space is my passion. I'm a little bit of an HR geek at heart, and Paylocity is a human capital management technology company. So they're in the business of HR and have a unique opportunity to counsel the business on employment and litigation related matters, you know, internally, but also to consult on compliance related to the products that we're offering.
Okay. Jason, up to you.
Hey, so I was also a Wayne undergrad, and probably like a lot of you, I thought for sure I wanted to be a lawyer when I was an undergrad. I mean, since I was a kid, I thought that I wanted to be a lawyer, right? And I actually ended up going to Wayne State. I got in trouble in high school. My parents made me join the debate team, and I ended up being okay at it and got a scholarship to go to Wayne State. So that's why I went to Wayne State. And then, you know, I went to Wayne State for law school as well, and I wanted to be a litigator originally. I mean, that was, if I was going to be a lawyer, I wanted to continue, you know, argumentation and persuasion and debate. And I thought for sure that I would litigate. And I think I made an early mistake in my law school career. My first year, I kind of got like that dream internship that you hope that, you know, you get after your first year. And I was like, okay, this is great. They're going to hire me. They made me a full-time offer while I was still a law student to work for them on a legal staff. And the condition was it had to be full-time, right? And I thought, this is perfect. I'm going to, it was then Delphi. You guys may know them now. It's Aptiv, but an automotive supplier, and they had a huge legal staff, and it was in-house, and, you know, it paid really well. So you know, I thought this is great. And I started working like 60, 70 hours a week for them while I was in law school. And honestly, I made, you know, great money, and I learned a lot, and it was a great experience. The problem was I really didn't take law school that seriously. So, you know, I mean, I was a B student through most of law school. If you opened most of my textbooks, I probably read the first 3 cases in all of them, and then didn't open them again until finals, right? And then even from there, I would share outlines. And so for somebody who really wanted to be a lawyer their whole, you know, life, and then to get in law school and then get a good job, I was a poor example of what, I would recommend that you do. So kind of a piece of early advice and just in this introduction kind of on the career is don't fall in love with the job while you're in law school. You're in law school to be in law school. And, if you want to become a good lawyer, then, that internship maybe can wait, right? So anyways, my career path anyways, I passed the bar and I did, practice in-house for 3 years for that company. And I was, at that point, I'd worked for them for 6 years and I had kind of gone through, I don't know, it felt like a whole career and it didn't feel like there was a whole lot of room for me to continue to learn and that, it just wasn't what I started to become a lawyer for. So a couple of friends were starting a startup and I got involved with them and we were fortunate last year to sell it to a public company who hired us to work for them now. So I'm the CEO of a company called Club Caddy and we build golf course management software. I'm actually down in North Carolina setting up a bunch of our golf courses down here now. But we, yeah, I guess I no longer really practice law. I'm the law dropout probably of the group. And, I'm happy, all right? I love my job, but I think I can tell you a lot of things not to do in law school, probably more than tell you what to do.
All right. Well, this represents an important perspective because a lot of people who start out as lawyers go on to do other things, and it's important that people have that perspective. But now at the other end of the spectrum, we have a judge with us. So Wesley Persett, go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me. Let's see, I've only been a judge for about a year. Most of my practice, I went to Wayne State. I had several, I can't even remember how many classes I've had with Professor Roth. I call him Professor Roth. Y'all were kind of throwing me with this Dr. Roth thing. So I've always called him Professor Roth. So I was like, is it the same person? But I'd had, I can't remember how many classes we had together. Can't remember how many discussions we've had together about the law, philosophy, international law, and all of those things. I am probably the eldest person here. I graduated Wayne State in 2000. And when I came to Wayne State, I was a non-traditional student. I was about 33 years old when I started at Wayne State, and I was married, and my then wife at the time was in residency. So, and I worked full time. I was working as a barista slash manager at Starbucks. So I had an interesting time at Wayne State, though I loved it, and it was a great school, and I really treasure the days I was there. So when I came to law school, I was an older student again. I was older than probably about 4 of my classmates coming in to Mercer. I graduated law school in 2003, so I think a lot of you probably were in maybe preschool or something like that during the time that I was in law school. I graduated in 2003. And my journey has been basically entrepreneurial. I was a I started off as a prosecutor. I did about 2 years as a prosecutor in a Central Georgia, which was interesting. Being a person from my background, practicing as a prosecutor in an area that was interesting. I had my first jury trial in the courthouse that they filmed the court scenes from Fried Green Tomatoes. And the interesting thing about it was the reason they picked the courtroom was because they had a balcony up top that where the African-American citizens would sit for trials, and it was still there. And I had my first jury trial there as a prosecutor. So that was a real interesting experience. When I left the DA's office, I did a little bit of civil practice work, civil litigation. Wasn't really my cup of tea. I was pretty much, I knew I wanted to be a litigator. I knew I wanted to be a criminal litigator. So I opened my own firm here in Gwinnett County, practicing criminal defense law and mainly focusing on representing indigent people. I did a lot of appointed work. During my 16 years in practice, I probably tried as a prosecutor, as a defense lawyer, somewhere around 80 jury trials. I've tried everything from shoplifting to murder. The only thing I had not tried was a capital case, and that was because here in Georgia you had to be capital certified, and I wasn't able to get the certification, which is probably a good thing because a lot of people I know who do the capital cases, they tend to affect them a great deal. But needless to say, I saw a lot of cases, represented a lot of people. So questions about law school is it doesn't teach you representing a person, and representing a person for that person. Which
Well, we're
is,
having a little bit of a connection problem with you, Wesley. If you maybe repeat the last couple of sentences.
oh, well, I was saying, I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with my internet. But you know, I did a lot of work representing indigent people, a lot of poor people who could not afford a lawyer. And then I was elevated to the bench last year. I am on what is called Recorder's Court. Recorder's Court is basically a giant county traffic court. I hear all traffic related offenses, DUI, speeding, illegal turns, all of that stuff, and also county ordinances. So I get to hear, you know, dog cases and, you know, people who don't keep their property up. And it's interesting because about 85% of the people that come before me are unrepresented. See a lot of pro se people. So I find myself making sure that people who, again, they don't have access to legal advice, that they're not putting themselves in jeopardy by sort of pleading the things just to get it over with, trying to encourage them to seek legal representation and things of that nature. So that is pretty much what I do. So if you have any questions about being a litigator, being a person who runs their own practice, and also, you know, being a judge and running for office, because I ran for office a couple of times, I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Okay, and finally, Anna.
Hi, everyone. I was going to apologize for my cat, but then I realized no one's ever been mad at an animal being on Zoom. So he's here. He'll come back, I'm sure. But nice to see everyone. Nice to meet some people for the first time. My name is Anna, and I know Dr. Roth mentioned that I'm a public defender here in El Paso, Texas. So it is still light out where I am. It's only 5 o'clock. So I have still some daylight, which is nice. I have been an attorney for almost a year. I graduated from Wayne State with a bachelor's in political science and a bachelor's in Spanish in 2015. And then I started at the University of Michigan Law School in 2016 and graduated with both my JD and my MSW in 2019. So since graduating, I, for the past year, have been what's called a Gideon's Promise Fellow. Gideon's Promise is a public defense specific fellowship. So we're stationed kind of all across the South. The farthest west that Gideon's goes is actually El Paso, some of the farthest west, but it's primarily based in Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky. So if anyone is interested in public defense, it's a really good fellowship if your law school funds it. While I was in law school and grad school, I interned at the Orleans Public Defenders in New Orleans, Louisiana, at the Federal Defender Office in Detroit, the Bronx Defenders in Bronx, New York, and then also the State Appellate Defender Office in Detroit as well when I did my social work year. So I have a lot of, pretty much my only experience is public defense, and I'm totally okay with it because I can't imagine doing anything else. I represent clients in a state county court or a county court here, which is just a misdemeanor court. But here is, primarily nonviolent offenses, but, some simple assaults, DWIs, thefts, what you'd think of as kind of low level offenses. And it's been really Great. So I'm happy to answer any questions about law, about social work, public defense, criminal law, whatever questions people might have. I did also want to embarrass my brother, who is on the Zoom as well. He came to visit.
If you weren't gonna, I was.
Yeah, no, I got it. Don't worry. He's a 2L at Wayne State Law, and he graduated from Wayne State undergrad a couple of years ago. So his name is Michael. He's very nice. I think he's single also. So.
Hey, all right. So hello, everyone. My name is Michael. I'm a 2L. If you have any questions, you could always, contact me. I'll leave my contact information in the box, and the other stuff is totally not relevant. So thank you.
But really nice to meet everyone, and I'm super excited. I love these types of events, so thank you for the invite.
So the overarching theme that I kind of sketched out for people beforehand was, what do you wish you had known if you were in the position of current students? So maybe anybody wants to pick up on that in any way they might want to pick up on it. But if folks, lots of different potential dimensions to that, but anything immediately come to mind that people want to start off with?
So I had oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jenna. You have a question?
Yeah, so my question was, I know a lot of you had, like, some of you were prosecutors, some of you were litigators. Like I said, I'm in the business school. I don't hear about all those kinds of careers as much. Would you be able to kind of go into which, what each position does and what side of the court you kind of serve on? I know that Wesley said he had his own practice, and then Amy, you were saying that you were a litigator. I was just wondering, how do you get into those fields, as well as what you do, and in determining what that you wanted to do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. And it sort of leads into what I was going to talk about, which is I was a first generation law student. I didn't come from a family that had any kind of background in the law. So I didn't really know what being a lawyer meant when I went to law school. I just knew that I liked the law. I kind of thought like a lawyer. Professor Roth or Dr. Roth taught me that throughout some of my courses with him. But I didn't really know what it was about. And in law school, at least when I was there, a lot of the focus is around, getting in at a big firm, right? And this partner track. And that was not something that I ever felt super drawn to. And so one of the things I would have wished is that we had something like this where I could have found out more about all these different career paths. And I've stumbled into some of them, but I think that, there's a pretty strong focus in most law schools of this traditional path of going into a firm and, working your way up, and you don't learn a lot about the other things. I think some law schools are more focused on, the public service sector now too, have a lot of clinics focused in those areas, which is great to get that kind of experience. But for me, I got out and actually didn't have a job right away when I got out of school, which was terrifying. And I was graduating in the middle of a recession. So I was really trying to justify to my family, why was it that you went to law school again and you don't have a job? And so I actually started out selling insurance. And I was working with this insurance company that was run by lawyers. And so they kind of had a different take on things. And you just sort of make do. I actually had a terrible experience there. Was very unsupported. I actually literally quit the Monday after I got my bar results because I was trying to work for this. They were a family of lawyers and they really weren't on the same page of what they needed. And I was seeking guidance on how to prioritize my work. I was brand new, and I was told that I didn't know what I was doing and I would never make it as a lawyer. Those exact words. And I don't know what possessed me, but I just said, okay, well then I don't think this is the right place for me. And I walked out, and then I cried the whole way home because I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I have student loans to pay back. I don't have a job. I don't know. But you know what, it worked out, and I had done a lot of different internships during my time. So I think Jason said, like, don't fall in love with one place. I'd worked at a small prosecutor's office. I'd worked at a mid-sized law firm. I did a lot of different things. And so I'd made different connections. And I think building a network is something else I wish I would have known. Like, it's important to get out and just meet people and learn from different people, because that's how you know what exists for you out there. And those relationships helped me find a place with the small law firm that I started. And I was, like I mentioned, doing property tax litigation. Most lawyers don't love math. Property tax has a whole lot to do with math. And I was terrified that I didn't know what I was doing. But one thing I have learned along the way is litigation. So it's a good skill, I think, for all lawyers to just know and get a background in and learn, whether it's an internship or something else along the way. And I think I was a month in at a very small firm, and I got asked to write a Court of Appeals brief. And sort of these are the things that set my career in motion. So that next year, by the time that came up for oral argument, I was arguing in front of the Michigan Court of Appeals. And then I became the person at the firm that did all of our, appeal work. So, I had this opportunity as I went along to get some really great experience being at a small firm that at large firms, you don't necessarily get that as quickly. So after being there for a while, I also had a business background. I was a marketing major at Wayne myself. And I just, after sort of seeing the legal world for a while, thought that, I would enjoy it in-house. I didn't like litigating. I still litigate today in a different capacity, but I just didn't want to fight with people all day long. It got overwhelming for me. And I thought, well, in-house, it's a different perspective, and I can help an organization be more proactive to try to avoid some of that, right? And then you're only there when you really have to be. And I got in-house, and I did really enjoy it. And like I mentioned, I had opportunity that spun from that, because I was just really, and I was always curious about learning the business that I was supporting. And if you're supporting a business like externally or internally, like just getting to know the business and understanding how they work, you're going to be a better lawyer for the organization. So, finding networks, finding mentors, just people to talk to help learn like what's out there, because I didn't know what existed when I started that journey.
So I'm going to say off the bat, if I could do it all over again, I would have went to Wayne State Law School, and not because my law school was bad, because my debt load coming out of Wayne State, being an in-state student, would have been low. Law schools are expensive. And if you can go to Wayne, or you can go to a state school where your tuition is going to be in-state, do it. If you can get into Harvard or Yale or any of those schools, because once you come out of there, you sort of have the golden ticket, like on Willy Wonka, then I would say it's hard to sort of not go there. But if you can get into Wayne State Law School, ladies and gentlemen, jump in and don't look back, because what sort of is going to frame how you practice law and what type of law you're going to take is that student debt. You're going to take jobs that you may not necessarily want to take. You're going to do things that you may not necessarily want to do. You may work at a big firm and hate the hours, but because they pay you a salary, you're going to do it. Second thing, don't go into law for the money. Say that again, don't go into law for the money. Because you can get rich doing a lot of other different things. Most lawyers don't make a whole lot of money. If you work for a firm, the amount of money you make based on the amount of hours that you work, I have friends that say I make minimum wage, and they make pretty decent money. But the amount of hours and the work-life quality is abysmal, where they have to justify those salaries. If you make, if you make, say, $250,000 a year, you got a bill. and they expect those billables. They don't want any, oh, well, my kid had a baseball game, or it was my spouse's birthday, or my dad or, my mom was sick. They're going to be like, hey, we expect you to bill 1,700 hours a week, a year, and you got to bill it. And if you don't, and it is, it's a haul. So I would say, Wayne State is a great value. It is a wonderful law school. If you get in, you won the golden ticket. Go in there. Don't worry about, because I know people go, well, you got to go to this law school to make it. I've met lawyers that went to law schools that weren't considered the most prestigious, and they're some of the best lawyers I've ever seen. They are awesome in the courtroom. I mean, they are phenomenal. They walk into the courtroom and people whisper because they're that good. And they didn't go to, and there are, a lot of PI lawyers that didn't go to the greatest law school, and they're kicking the butts of lawyers that went to Harvard, Yale, Cornell, and they're kicking the butts of these big firms every day. That they don't even want to see them in court because they know what's going to happen. So those are the two things I wish someone had told me. Number one, Wesley, go to Wayne State because you're not going to have that big student loan payment. And I'm telling you, y'all may be laughing at me now and thinking I'm joking, but 20 years from now, you're still paying that student loan off. You're going to be like, I wish I listened to that guy when he told me to go to Wayne State when I would have had a manageable debt load. And, don't go on the law for the money, because it's not, you're not going to make as much money as you think. And your life is not going to be as great as you think if you do it for the money.
It's interesting that people have gone in different directions geographically. And of course, you went to Central Georgia, and Myrna, on the other hand, went to the big city.
I did.
And so I'd like to hear about that. And then another thing I'd like to hear about is the applicability, to pick up on some of the stuff that's been going on, the applicability of a legal education to business. And so I'm hoping Jason can fill us in on that. But Myrna, what's it been like to go from Detroit to NYC? And do you recommend people go to law school and take on law practice there?
So yeah, student loans. I mean, don't get me started. I don't know where I could stop rambling, but the government could have paid our student loans, but instead they give it to the military or other foreign nations to do very bad things. But I'll digress on that point. None of us would have to worry about student loans. But I chose to go to New York for other reasons than just law school. To be honest, I care a lot about community. As a refugee in the States, Detroit was my first home in the States. And I really wanted to go to Wayne State Law, but at some point it felt a little bit like I needed to be around my queer Muslim community, which I've worked hard to build. And honestly, I'm very grateful I did, because law school destroys people emotionally, physically, anything, really everything. It's quite intense. It's very alienating. It depends on what school you go to. It could be very competitive. I was lucky. I went to CUNY Law. We're very known for social justice and public defense law. So if you are interested in doing that kind of work, like actually organizations look out for people who graduate from my school, and like, for example, from criminal law clinic. But I found it very, I don't know, I'm very lucky to have been able to get into CUNY. I got a 10K scholarship, a semester or a year, I forgot, something like that. And they really, like, the biggest thing that drew me to that is one clinic called CLEAR, creating law enforcement and accountability. And actually in that clinic, I was both on the docket as a client, and I was also a student. It was intense. I didn't like it because I was on a CARP watch list. I think some people might be familiar with it, but they've delayed my citizenship by many years. I was on a watch list, and so it was interesting to be like kind of doing know your rights about Muslim communities and Muslim activists being on a watch list. and etc., and doing it as a student, but also being directly impacted and really in good hands at the clinic, where it felt like really there was a community behind you. It was taxing, definitely. I would advise that you approach that with caution if you are directly impacted, whether it being, someone who has an incarcerated person in the family and doing criminal defense or prosecution, which I have feelings about that. But also, like, for example, in my situation, doing anti-law enforcement stuff and combating Islamophobia within that framework was a lot. But also, I don't regret doing it. I learned a lot from it, both being a student for other clients and also a client who was represented by my school colleagues and professors. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question. But there's a lot of layers to that. But one thing I want to talk about is the money stuff that no one talks about. In New York, we're lucky we get paid as starting now, I think it's 71K as a law graduate, as a public defender. The cost of living here obviously is a lot. Wesley, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, but like if you work for a law firm, I know a lot of people who also mentally couldn't, handle that challenge, etc. But there are a lot of other jobs like outside of those two realms that, like Amy had mentioned, that exist, and like you could find a good balance in your life and like actually pay you well. Because honestly, you deserve to get paid well, especially if you come from a first generation attorney, especially if you're not from here, especially, if you have all of those like just challenges in a white dominant society and white privilege in a world we live in. So I feel like it's important that you do follow that in a way and balance it with your passion of obviously. But I wish people told me I could, for example, go and apply as a data and privacy counsel at, like, for example, Google, because then I could directly apply the things that me personally, I was on a watch list and also studied in law school at clinic, and then get paid like 100K. So those I think are important things to discuss, because January is coming and I'm going to start paying my student loan, and it does hurt to have to pay that. So that's just a little piece of it that I wish we talked more about it. And as public defenders, there's a lot of shaming around that. And then, it's like, how are you going to follow the money? And I'm like, yes, I am anti-capitalist, I am, etc. But at the same time, I don't come from a family that I will inherit, I don't know, X, Y, and Z from. That's not my background. And I think it's important we have open conversations about that.
Well, to get something from the other side of the spectrum, from sort of public interest, public defense, and so on, the applicability of legal education to business, I think, is something that's important to a lot of students. And so I'd like to get Jason on that. I also have taken note of the fact that Emily had a question earlier, so I will want to go to her pretty soon after that. But Jason, can you give us some insights?
Well, I'm definitely not anti-capitalist, and Myrna, don't mean that as an insult, just I come from the opposite side, right? And the one thing that I realized is that if you want to do good as a lawyer, you don't make any money as a lawyer. And I have a lot of respect for, people on the panel who are public defenders and prosecutors and judges, and we absolutely need them. And thank God that they're willing to do it, right? But if you're willing to do bad as a lawyer, and I'm not, and that's why I don't practice law, because I realized I wanted to make a lot of money to be happy. I grew up very poor. And I realized that if I was going to do, something that I was passionate about, that I wasn't going to make any money doing it. I was going to end up riddled with law school debt. So the friends that I have that are doing the best from law school, actually practicing law financially, all hate their jobs, right? There are people who are doing what they call PI, personal injury. So they're suing people, for car accidents, and, working those billable hours. They're, helping corporations make lots of money and so on, right? And so there's this dichotomy, I guess, I think, where it is tough to be a lawyer. If you want to do good, you generally don't make a lot. If you are willing to, use your skills in other ways, you can make a lot of money, but you often don't feel good about it, right? And so for me, I realized, you know, I want to make money. I don't want to hurt people. And I kind of just left law, right? But that being said, the legal education definitely helped me in my business career. I look at it like you'll take your critical thinking skills and you'll put them on steroids. You'll be able to organize information in ways that you didn't know your brain was capable. You'll see patterns and things that you didn't see before. You'll know in the conversations what somebody's going to say before they say it. And I don't really think that has a whole lot to do with legal education, or I'm sorry, with the law itself. It has to do with the way that lawyers think and the way that law school trains you to think. So, you know, when I took the LSAT, I did really well on the reading part, but those logic games just, I don't know, they were a pain in the butt for me, right? And so after law school, I don't know why, but I had just passed the bar and I was excited. And then for some reason, I decided I was going to take an hour and to play these logic games and, you know, see how I did on them. And I did much better, right? And so law school will train your brain to think in different ways. And by the time that you're done, your critical thinking skills will help you in any career. And so for me, they've helped me in business, but I think they're equally as applicable to anything that you want to do. So I think a legal education is worthwhile, if nothing more than the way that you'll leave with a brain that thinks and maybe more effectively. And you don't necessarily have to practice law once you have that legal education, right? A couple other things is I think that business is more applicable to law than law is to business. So I mentioned I got a really great internship right after my first year of law school, and the reason why they offered to keep me is because they said that they couldn't find transactional minded lawyers, people who looked at things not from the perspective of the law. Because when you go in-house or when you work for a business, if you go to court, you messed up or somebody really messed up. Every problem is resolved what we call commercially. That means that you negotiate a deal that makes sense for both sides, right? And so I would say probably 90% of disputes between businesses or even between businesses and parties are resolved out of court or even resolved in the pre-negotiation stage before anybody's filed a complaint. And so if you have business experience and then you go to law school, I think that helps you to be more marketable. It will definitely help you to have context when you have an opportunity to deploy your legal skills. And I think that potentially it gives you an opportunity to, potentially make more money. I mean, in-house lawyers right out of law school, you'll do fairly well, although you probably wouldn't do as well as some of the top litigators that may work inside, may work in a law firm. So nutshell, I guess, is law school is great for your education. Great to make you, I guess, think more effectively. If you want to do good and you want to make money, you're probably going into the wrong education and should pursue something else. Law school doesn't really help with business I shouldn't say doesn't help. It certainly helped. I negotiate my own contracts and that saves money and so on, but I could outsource all of that at this point, right? Me being a lawyer doesn't help me do my job, but me having some business experience before going to law school made me a much more effective lawyer. So if you're not sure if you want to do business or law, I'd recommend get some business experience, see how much you like it, and then go to law school afterwards. That's what I did. It will definitely help you with your legal career. The last piece of advice, a lot of people go into law school and their focus is on networking. And I think the mistake that people make when they go into law school and they try to network is they're only trying to network for their first opportunity, right? So you're looking at how do I get my first job? In 5 years out of law school, that first job is probably gone and replaced with something else. And now, I guess I'm going on almost a decade out of law school, but I realized probably 5-6 years out of law school, the best networking or the best contacts that I had were my law school peers. And, some of them are partners and, they're judges and they can help me in all kinds of ways, whenever I really needed it, or if I needed a job, I'm sure I could get a job there too. And so if I could give you advice, it would be, don't worry about kissing up to your professors. Don't go to all the networking events. Don't, think that your first internship is going to become your career. Spend time in your classes with your peers, develop meaningful relationships, and those meaningful relationships will pay off way more than, that first opportunity that you get.
Well, we're in a bit of an interdisciplinary role here. And so Anna represents the plunge into not simply a law degree, but a joint program with a whole other discipline, social work. And so I wonder if she can tell us something about how those two things mesh and what the value is of doing an MSW along with a JD.
Absolutely. So I started my MSW program after I finished my first year of law school and after I got back from my first internship. And I knew pretty shortly after I started my first year that I wanted to do public defense or like indigent defense in general. And I knew that actually my supervisor at the Orleans Public Defenders just happened to also be a JD MSW. It was just kind of happenstance. It was awesome. And so I knew, the population of people that I wanted to work with. Mental health is something that is like super, super underfunded, not super well understood. And my thing going into it, knowing that I wanted to do direct services, public defense was, how can I be the best advocate for people that I can be? And so while I'm not a practicing social worker, meaning I'm not licensed, I have a full, social work background. And it gives me a different lens. I think similarly to, if you come from a different discipline like business or, something else, it'll give you a different lens on how you look at the law. And for me, I've noticed, differences between myself and my peers, where I typically will put kind of legal issues to the side, at least temporarily when I'm working with clients, and really focus on connecting them with services. And, luckily for us, and I think, probably public defender offices across the country, we have like a whole fleet of social workers, and they're my best friends in the office. So we do have, people in our office to connect our clients with community resources, different, I know in Michigan, I think it was called like community mental health. So that's been probably the best thing about having that interdisciplinary background, specifically in social work. I think it's I can speak intelligently about mental health as well, in a way that, like, once I put that MSW next to my name, no one's really going to question it, which is really helpful considering, like, it's hard, like, being young and a woman in the courtroom. That's like you're kind of screwed from the beginning. So it like helps whatever extra letters you can add. But I've really enjoyed it. I love social work just as much as I love law. I realized, in my program, like I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I never thought, let me go do social work instead. That might be something in the future. I'm not sure. I'm not closing myself off to any possibilities, but I think having that extra experience is definitely helpful, but super not necessary. And I know, some of the best advocates in my office have some of them, yeah, they have no like background in mental health whatsoever, but they've taught themselves. And that's something, that whatever law you go into, you're not going to know everything going into it, because you're going to come out having taken 1 or 2 classes, and you'll have to learn the rest of it, on the job, so to speak. So, don't worry if there's something that you don't know a whole lot about, but you kind of want to practice that law. You will have time to learn it. And our mental health unit at the office, no one, except for me, has a background in mental health, but they're all just as proficient as I am. So I love it, but it's not necessary, I promise.
Okay. There was a question earlier from Emily Barrett. I don't know if she wants to get in, and then Jocelyn Phillips also had a question. Emily, are you wanting to chime in?
Hi. So yeah, I'm sorry. I accidentally raised my hand.
Oh,
So yeah, I had my dog with me and she was kind of like on my phone for a second. So I think she must have done that. So yeah, sorry. No questions on my part right now.
all right. Very good. Well, Jocelyn has one. So.
Yeah, for those who are female presenting here, I just was wondering what your experiences have been throughout your law career, and how you've been treated based on your identities.
I can start. I'm in court every day, pretty much. And the way that our county works, and every jurisdiction is different how they do it. But in our office, there's a public defender who is assigned to each court. For myself, the court that I practice in is called County Court at Law number 4. And I am 90% of the time the only, female identifying, female presenting person in the court. I like to, myself and like our court clerk, we text when it's, other people are going, and I just say, wow, what a sausage fest today, because that's what it is, truly. So it hasn't, I haven't experienced anything, like no sort of discrimination because of my gender identity since starting. It's more been that I'm sure most people either know of or have experienced themselves. You could I find that I'm yelling things at the top of my lungs, like figuratively, not literally, a lot. And then if I'm just like, oh, fine, let me bring my supervisor into this, who's like this experienced, like older male defense attorney, and then the problem gets solved like that. So when it's like my idea. So if that helps, it's just a lot of, you have to, I guess, kind of work until people start listening, which is not ideal, but I think you're going to experience that anywhere.
As someone who is like kind of gender non-conforming, I started practicing online, and we didn't have video at the beginning, so it was interesting. But what I did get as a comment is that I have apparently an accent. And one of the judges, the administrative law judges, was like, oh, I really love your accent. You're going to get away with a lot of things. It was very inappropriate. But at the same time, I was like, sure, I'll use it to my client's advantage as much as I need to. And so for once I was like, you know what, do I sound very French right now? I work that out, and I don't know, maybe you shouldn't, but it did do some good when we didn't, they've never met me in person. And then we started seeing them on video, and that was a bit awkward. But something that my friend who's trans and works actually for the Brooklyn Defenders told me, which was very interesting, is that so they started as female presenting in their job as a public defender. And then they started taking hormones. And then once they transitioned fully, they had a beard, they sounded more like a man. They were shocked at how quicker things happened and how much of their clients started calling them and not questioning them, they'll be like, yeah, of course, that's what my attorney said. But then before it would be like, are you sure? Do you want to check in with your supervisor? Etc. And that I feel like someone who has transitioned, it just brings that to life, in that these things, even though maybe some of us don't experience them, but they're very much real. And they do, and you're gonna doubt yourself in that, and it's not your fault. It's patriarchy's fault. And it's just it is real, and it's something you're gonna have to live with. I mean, not have to live with, sorry, I never want to say that, I apologize, but I meant it's something that you will go through. And it's how are you gonna tolerate it? But maybe Amy also has more thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think that it is a reality of just the legal practice still. I think, organizations, law firms alike, everybody's trying to do better. I see it every day. So I think that's a positive, but I frequently was asked if I was the paralegal or the secretary when I started my first job, and would call, a male attorney on the other side. And actually my husband, him and I started working at the same firm around the same time. He was never asked that ever. And we still joke about that today. Those things, they exist. I get questioned far more or challenged far more than my male counterparts, even today. And, you get a lot more comments on your looks and things like that. But to Myrna's point, I've utilized those things when they occur to my advantage, right? Where I have a mediator that has says, oh, well, we have this beautiful room of women here. Yes, and we are going to kick your butt today, right? Like you're going to help us get what we want and not even know it. So it needs to change. And, you know, part of really what I focused on in my roles with organizations is what can I affect where I'm at? How can I, not just in the legal profession, but within the organization I am at, really support DEIA initiatives that really give women a voice and help raise up our female leaders, because we need more diverse perspectives in every part of, you know, business and law and everything, so that we can do things differently and see things differently and not have those issues. But we're not there yet. And I've had an interesting career in that every boss I've reported to directly has been a female attorney, and that's pretty atypical. So I've enjoyed that, you know, seeing that strong female leadership firsthand, having that support firsthand. You know, I think there's this notion of imposter syndrome that I think a lot of young attorneys feel, but it's more so for female attorneys. And, you know, I still battle that, you know, almost, I don't know, 18 years later. And I think I'm to a point where I'm almost past that. But it's taken me a really long time. And the biggest support I've had is other female leaders, other female attorneys. They've really been able to connect with and share those experiences and talk about them and learn that everybody is experiencing them and learn different ways to work through them and cope with them, and, you know, stand up and speak up for yourself in those situations to help limit and eliminate them.
Thanks. So Alec Austin has a question.
Hi, I'm just curious. I've noticed a lot of you went to Wayne State and then went out of state. Was there something that like drawed you all to went out of state? Was it like, was the city just, did you just want to get away from Detroit, or was it like, I'm just curious because I want to get out of state to go to law school also, but I'm just like not sure as to where I want to go yet.
Well, I left because I followed my wife's career. So she was a physician and she went back to Georgia. I love Detroit. I mean, I didn't want to leave Detroit, to be honest with you. But her career called her to Georgia and I dutifully followed. So that's my, I guess.
I'm still in Detroit because my wife's career is in Detroit, right? So, and I don't want to be,
right? So,
yeah.
Another former student of mine, in fact. Yeah.
Three of us talked at the same time. I left Michigan after law school. I miss it very much. I don't think I'll ever be returning though. But I left kind of for the job, for my fellowship, you know, brought me out here. It doesn't exist in like the northern part of the US. It's entirely based in the South. And then, like I mentioned earlier, only recently moved a little bit further west in El Paso. But for me, the struggle, and luckily this has changed in the past literally 2-3 years. When I was in law school, the state of Michigan didn't have public defense like it does now. It only had a couple offices. And so it was really, it would have been difficult to find a job that I wanted. So that's mostly why I left, which I know all of my friends from law school who went into public defense, they all left kind of for the same reason, but things are getting much better for, you know, aspiring public defenders in the state of Michigan.
and Alex, I don't know what type of law you want to practice or what type of lawyer you want to be. But one of the things I've seen in my practice is typically, you know, you're more successful as a lawyer when you have a base and a community, because that's pretty much where you're going to sort of be able to use your your talent. So, you know, you might want to explore opportunities in Detroit. I mean, be quite honest with you. They may be better opportunities for you in Detroit to build a legal career than it would be to come into Atlanta or go somewhere else where you think, hey, it's going to be better because you have a community there in Detroit that you can, you know, perhaps use your talents and skills as a lawyer. So think about Detroit. I mean, may not be a bad opportunity for you.
So just to add to everybody, my girlfriend was in Detroit. So I was kind of like invested in Detroit, not just as my first American home, but like as my girlfriend was there. But I followed community first. And actually that's how I landed at CUNY in New York, because one of my main jobs was going into mosques in all basically New York, Harlem, Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan. And what we do is I would train Yemeni women or any other like Arab women who have just come or have been here. We do know your rights about like a lot of things. And that's how I landed there. And for me, I guess it was a purpose that called me into it. And I feel like, Alec, the right thing to think about, you might not have the answers to. Like, I think I would have been like offended if someone asked me, what do you know what you want to practice? Because I'm like, I don't know. I didn't know at the time. But maybe you should really be honest with yourself. It's like what calls you, you know, is it just you want to change? Because also at some point I decided like I didn't want to do Wayne State Law because it felt a little bit saturated for me there, meaning saturated in a way that I felt overwhelmed by all the other Arabs there. I wasn't like other Arabs. Like I was an asylum seeker. I didn't have anybody here. And they were not like, I felt like a lot of people who went to that school were like connected. They had lots of money. They had lots of law firms and stuff. And that for me didn't sit well. And I felt like it just wasn't going to make me thrive in my community. I struggled a lot as a queer person within the Arab community, not to say like homophobia is only Arab, just want to be clear. Everybody around the world can be homophobic. But it's just for me, it didn't feel like I was following my purpose. And so really sit with that. And also honestly do the math. I wish I did that. Like, would you be living with someone in Detroit or would you be living in another state where it costs like there are some states you can't eat for less than $15. And when you're a law student, that's gonna matter when you're gonna have to eat all day out. Like, how's the commute? Are you gonna have a car? Honestly, as much as you can budget, and I can't believe I'm saying this again, like I'm a refugee survivor who came with nothing. So I literally never had this like language in my life and no one in my family did it. So I feel like, but it's important, like kind of crunch your numbers, have a minimum, maximum. And if you're going to end up doing a career where you know your maximum income is going to be a certain amount, then maybe that's going to call you. And if something else is calling upon you, I think follow it. But just do it from an informed basis, and definitely don't move for just, I don't know, because you think it's a better school, just because the internet said so. Like, you know, Wesley said, like, you can be an amazing attorney if you find your calling. And no matter what that is, you will be brilliant whatever school you go to.
Mm-hmm. So, Jocelyn, you have another question?
Yeah, slightly off topic, if that's okay.
Sure.
I believe it was Wesley who said that he started off as a prosecutor and is now, well, a judge, but turned to defense. Is that correct?
Yes, and it sort of, I fell into being a prosecutor, and you know, one of the things about like law school and the whole, because I didn't have a job. I mean, that's why I became a prosecutor, honestly. They offered me a job. And I remember speaking, I was very frustrated because I thought I did well in law school. I was on the national moot court team. I was ranked high in my class, had all this experience. And I remember a partner at a major law firm told me, he's like, nobody's gonna hire you. And I was like, why? He was like, because you're intimidating, because you're a large African-American male and they're afraid of you. So I was like, okay. So got a job as a prosecutor, greatest thing to happen to me, because I got to go in the courtroom, because I knew I wanted to be a litigator. And I knew I wanted to argue. So being a prosecutor was good because I got to learn how to be a litigator on someone else's dime. Because one of the things I'm going to tell you, law school doesn't teach you how to be a lawyer. It doesn't. You're not gonna learn this craft of law in law school. Law school is the entry into the craft, but it doesn't teach you how to be a lawyer. It really doesn't. So I got the opportunity to learn, how to present a case, how to select a jury, how to, speak to a judge. A lot of times you got the law on your side, but if you don't know your audience, you're going to lose. You're going to lose every time because you have to persuade people and you have to learn those soft skills. One of the things I learned as a prosecutor, because I tend to, and Professor Roth probably remember this from my days as an undergraduate, I could be very forceful in my argument, very, passionate, pound the table. Well, that doesn't work all the time. I mean, that turns some people off. They kind of recoil and they don't listen to you. So I had to learn how to soften my voice and speak in a tone that drew people in. And I learned that as a prosecutor. And then when I, had enough of being a prosecutor, because that was tough, because you see certain things that you have to kind of go, oh, don't know if that's kind of right. But when I became a defense attorney, I learned those things and I was able to put them in practice for my clients. So, this thing about being a lawyer, I'm going to tell y'all, it's the greatest thing. I love it. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I wouldn't trade it for $1 million. I loved every minute of being a litigator. I loved it. It was just to walk into court and to represent someone and to speak on their behalf. So I always tell people, when I say you don't get rich from being a lawyer, I don't mean you're not going to be able to feed your family. You're not going to be able to pay the rent. You're not going to be able to go on a vacation. You're going to be able to do all those things. You're not taking a vow of poverty. But doing this thing has to be more important than money to me, my humble opinion. Because if you do it for the money, you're going to burn out. Because it is, you have to do a lot. Law is a jealous mistress. It's a jealous mistress. And I don't mean to, I'm sorry for the gender analogy. I hope I don't offend anyone, but it is a jealous, because it calls you, your client, they don't care about anything other than their case. That's all they care about, because it's their life. And you have to understand it. When you have an 18-year-old that's facing life or double life in prison, they don't care if, you have you're going to see a goddaughter star in a play. They care about, Mr. Person, are you ready for trial on Monday? Because I'm looking at double life. And you got to sort of understand that. And you got to put your life aside and you got to go in there and you got to read that transcript, for the 15th time. You got to read that police report for the 50th time. You got to look at that interview for the 19th time. And you got to go over that ME's report and see if you missed anything. Because really, their lives, and it's same in business, because if you have a client, you have a small business owner that's looking at his business being crushed from this litigation, they're gonna want you to be honed in. Corporate client, all of that. You become a lawyer, you become a sin eater. You're there to advocate for your clients, and your clients want you there. And you got to put it aside and you got to be about it. And if you do it just for the money ain't going to be enough. It ain't, because you're going to be like, yeah, it ain't worth it. And I know a lot of people that made a lot of money that are now, teaching school. They're artists, they're chefs. I got a friend that went to pastry school who's a chef. She gave up the practice of law. because it will eat you alive. If you're not doing it for the right reasons, money will never be enough.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So one of the themes here, well, I'll defer my my question to Anaya here. Anaya? You're muted.
The like celebration hand, or maybe you have a question. Go ahead.
Anaya?
I was clapping. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So what I was gonna ask about people's looking back on their undergraduate experience, what sort of skills did they develop in undergraduate that worked well for them going forward, or to the contrary, what skills do they wish they'd taken the opportunity to acquire when they were undergraduates that now they see the use of? Thoughts about that?
Multiple choice for me, it's really a big thing. Like a lot of people get multiple choice, and I'm like I pass every written essay. I can argue my way. I can put me on any topic. I'll IRAC the S out of it. IRAC is basically issue, rule, application, and conclusion, and that's literally what you need to know to pass the essay parts of the bar exam. And so that was easy to learn, but the multiple choice, if you're not from here and if you didn't grow up doing multiple choice, that's a big thing. And I wish I did take, like during my undergrad, I took classes that didn't have multiple choice in them. And I wish I didn't because it was good. And to be honest, I'm glad I took your class. And it's not because you invited me to this panel, because you were the first professor who was like, look, this is hard and this is how it's gonna look like with all the material you give us to digest, all the writing requirements they require. And you're quite flexible, to be honest, for someone who's like, for me, English is not my first language. And so I felt like you were the good balance of being supportive, but at the same time, I think structured enough to prepare me for the workload of what will look like. And I wish people don't shy away from these things more. I know we care a lot about GPA during that time and all that stuff. But like, honestly, maybe a course or two in that structured, intense reading way does go a long way, especially if you don't come from, an education background. And like, basically, I never had a stable education when I was younger. And I'm the only one in my family who even got to undergrad. So I feel like don't shy away from these things, even if they are challenging. They do prepare you for law school intensity.
Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, you,
Anna. Mine's going to be very brief. Organization and time management, that's it. You have to. I developed those skills in undergrad for sure, but I thought I was organized, but law school is a totally different beast, and it takes up a lot of time. So if you're going into it not having some sort of a system or a structure, you will quickly develop it, probably within like the first couple of months. So that's what I would say is really key. Like the school stuff will fall into place, but if your life's just a mess, it's going to be bad.
So I would recommend that you don't take any political science classes and don't waste your time in pre-law classes, to be honest. And then not because I'm telling you to go into business. First, I don't think they prepare you for law school in any way. You're going to get to law school and you're going to be like, oh man, I know nothing about the law. I don't think like a lawyer. I'm learning everything like this in every other situation. Second, and I don't know a lot about law school admissions, but what I do know is that a lot of law school admission boards are looking for diversity and looking for, not just, diversity in education and interests. And so, having a bunch of political science students doesn't really help with that, right? So I actually think that it may be counterproductive to help getting you into law school. And finally, the scariest thing when you have that moment that I don't want to be a lawyer, and you're educate, or your bachelor's degree is political science pre-law and you have a law degree is what the hell am I going to do next, right? And so, you know, if you have a marketing background, if you have a business background, an accounting background, some science, you know, or math background, I mean, you have a lot of opportunities. If you have a pre-law degree and you decide either law school isn't for me or being a lawyer isn't for me, you're not in a great situation. So, you know, I'd really recommend maybe, you know, looking into other programs, you know, getting that degree in something else. And if you want to go to law school, you still can. It won't hurt you. I think it would actually help you more.
I'm gonna push back against Jason just a little bit.
I was hoping someone would, so I didn't have to.
I'm gonna push.
Oh, Wesley froze on us.
No, his internet has failed, so Jason's going to have the last word on this topic by default here.
Well,
Of course, that's coming from the non-lawyer on the panel, right? Or the person who doesn't practice law anymore.
think
So take it with a
in
grain
all
of salt.
And I have to say, the person who bailed on my undergraduate class.
I think in all fairness, two things.
I did pick you up the other end.
I do think Dr. Roth's class helped me understand what law school was going to be like. I didn't know it at the time, but getting into it, it was, you know, it was definitely foreshadowing. I don't think anything can really prepare you for law school. It's just a different animal, but I understand what Jason's saying. I didn't do a political science undergrad. I just took a bunch of Dr. Roth's class because I knew I had an interest in it and I wanted to test it out, but I was terrified I would hate being a lawyer and it wasn't really what I was going to want to do. And I did want to have something to fall back on that I thought would be marketable and useful. Now, I did love the law and I love practicing law and I love practicing law in business and I couldn't imagine doing anything else now. But the things I wish I would have sort of focused on more is just learning some of the psychology behind people. And I think for a lawyer in whatever sort of area you are in, whether you're in public sector, private practice, you're representing clients or you're representing business, and you need to understand what makes people tick and why they're doing what they're doing and what's motivating them and what's scaring them and like the best way to help them. Because I think somebody said at the beginning, right? It's not a yes or no answer in the law. It's this world of maybe and gray areas, and there's a lot of different solutions to the problem most of the time. And navigating what the right solution isn't usually just based on objective facts. It's on a lot of how people feel, what they're perceiving, what's motivating them. And so just like understanding a little bit more of, you know, the psychology behind people and organizational behavior and things like that, I think I've learned along the way, but I wish I, you know, would have had known how much a part of this world it is.
Wesley, you back with us now.
I'm
So.
back. I'm sorry. I'm having all sorts of technology issues. This is weird. You know, I'm going to say this to you guys, and this is what I wish I had have done when I was at Wayne State. Relax. Relax. Tomorrow is always there. Enjoy today. Because I think I put so much pressure on myself thinking about law school and taking classes, and I don't think being a political science major is a bad thing. I think if you enjoy it and you're passionate about it, I think it's something that you know, you should do. One of the things I wish I had taken are more literature classes and more poetry classes, because what I've learned is law is about storytelling. It really is, either on paper or orally. It's about presenting a narrative and making that narrative as persuasive as possible. That's the thing that usually wins the case. But, you know, I'm one of those people that believe that, you know, your life is, you're destined to do what you're destined to do. It doesn't matter what your degree. If you're meant to be a great lawyer, you're going to be a great lawyer. That means if you're a lit major, a basket weaving major, or a political science major, if you know you're going to you know sort of achieve that. And the thing is we put too much pressure on ourselves because we're trying to live up to some expectation that may not be ours. Look, if you want to be a lawyer, be a lawyer. If you don't want to be a lawyer, don't be a lawyer because you think that that's the way to make money. If you want to go out and create the next great app, go do that. If you want to create the next great widget, go do that. If you want to paint, if you want to write a play, go do that. Because here's what I'm going to tell y'all. I'm 57 years old. I'm a little older. What I'm going to tell you is I've sat and I've had the opportunity, unfortunately, to watch people leave this earth. And one of the things they never said that they regretted is money. They never sat there and said, I wish I had made more money. They always said they wish they had did more with their lives in terms of opportunity. So I'm going to tell you, 57 years old, live the life that you envision for yourself. If it's to be a lawyer, then do that. But don't become a lawyer because you think it's going to be a path to wealth. One of the things I respect about Professor Roth is he's brilliant. He graduated from all the great schools, but he's dedicated himself to education. And not just education, but at a school like Wayne State that has a mission. I can't imagine, there have been several people on this call that said they're the first generation of. They're the first generation lawyer. They're the first generation college graduate. And who did they have the opportunity? What brings us all together is Professor Roth. Look at the lives that he's touched. And I guarantee it ain't about the money for him. It's about the passion of education. Find your passion, young people. And I can say that being 57. Find your passion. Find what motivates you. And if you do it, the money will come. The success will come. The enjoyment will come. The fulfillment will come. There are a lot of people that make a lot of money that are miserable. Miserable. And they have everything in the world. They can't even think of anything to buy because they have it all. But they're miserable. And there are people that I've met that have very little and they are wonderfully happy. Find your happiness, whatever that is. If it's law, welcome to the profession. If it's not, find your passion. You will be successful. You will be okay. You will have the life that is meant for you, not, some Insta famous or TikTok famous or Facebook famous life.
And
That's my
if I may just add to that is that you actually do harm if you become a lawyer and you don't want to do that. And if it's not your calling, you do a lot of harm, no matter what side you're on. I've seen pretty problematic public defenders. Like sometimes we're put on a pedestal and I think it's not right because we are part of that conveyor belt of the injustice system. And honestly, like everybody, I think agrees. And I think maybe Jason's point came across like maybe misunderstood, but I think I agree with everybody is that really find your calling. And it doesn't matter if you do what you do, what course you take. What's important is managing expectations, find your calling so you're not doing harm to your clients because you never want to be, miserable as a miserable lawyer. That's very toxic for you, your family, and your clients. And at the same time, also like, I don't know, I feel like it's like repeating ourselves, but and Anna said something very important is like the organized life and that balance. And really like, I wish someone told me that, self-care was part of this equation because you really, if you run, like, do it. If you need to do some crazy trip, hiking and stuff, like do those things because they really keep you on track with being sustainable and productive in a world that is just heavy. But definitely, please don't be a lawyer if you don't want to be a lawyer because it can end pretty bad for a lot of people. So
yeah. Enjoy undergraduate. This is the best time of your life. Seriously. Y'all are wasting.
Jocelyn.
Sorry to be asking so many questions. This one is for Mirna, I believe, specifically. If anybody else has thoughts, obviously, please jump in. I was just wondering your thoughts about working inside a system that just from this brief introduction that seemingly you don't agree with.
I wish I had the answer to it. I don't, because I feel like we would really have moved away from funding prisons and funding maybe police and funding all those things, because I want to be very clear. I'm a public defender, but I do believe in accountability. I just don't believe in how, like, I don't believe we're addressing harm by prosecuting people. I want to hold people accountable, but I don't think the way the system is currently working is actually holding people accountable, because we know that there's a lot of people who are doing harm and are just out and about in the community, rich, in suits, in power, and not in prison. And of course, yes, there are some people you represent and they tell you, yes, I did X, Y, and Z. And they tell you, yes, but majority of the time, it's just the rate of error, the margin of error in it is just so absolutely wrong. The cost of it is just doesn't make sense for a community. I struggle with it a lot. I really feel you're crunched in time. You're like literally next. And no matter how conscious you are, it's super draining, because you're gonna have to cut off your client's call, even no matter how much, like if he's in the SHU, which is like the solitary confinement, if he's whatever, like you're gonna have to cut time, because at the end of the day, you're in a organization that gives you, I don't know how many hundreds clients a year, so it's the reality of it. And at least I'm now, for me personally, it makes sense to be on the public defense side, but I definitely don't believe that like the road to abolition, or I don't believe that being a public defender, like, I don't know, I feel it's complicated. I don't know. This is not answering your question. It's like the Israel-Palestine thing. Like, I wish we did have an answer. There's like no answer to it. I just know we should talk about it and we should challenge each other. And just like it's uncomfortable for people, especially maybe for judges and stuff, to know like they're ruling within a system that actually, is flawed. Maybe some states have it worked out better than other states, but we're not addressing the purpose of it. Like, us addressing harm and accountability is not what's happening right now on the conveyor belt of injustice. Because so I would love us to get to a point as lawyers where we get to think of accountability of something more of a healing rather than punitive and creating more harm. And then, anyways, I digress. I have a lot of feelings about it, and it's really impacting my mental health. To be honest, it's really done a big thing about it. But at the end of the day, like, little things are, they do matter. Like, for example, there's also this thing, and I'm sorry, I will say this, and I have to go put my kids to sleep. They have school tomorrow. They're 4 years old, they're twins. So the one thing I want to say is that, like, as someone who's like abolitionist, like I had a lot of feelings about reform. But then when you're an ethical attorney who's representing people, like, for example, my Muslim clients who needed halal meals for iftars, like, and during Ramadan, like, that was a reform I was absolutely 100% with. And I think it's important to talk about reform in the road to abolition. And you'll find a lot of allies. I think that's what's important in being a public defender, in that there's a lot of people in the struggle with you, thinking about how can we destroy that conveyor belt and actually hold the right people accountable in ways that feel less punitive and more accountable. So I'm sorry I have to leave, but I have to put my kids to sleep. I'll like linger for like a few more minutes. It's so nice to meet everyone. Please reach out. I hope we can meet in person one day. Maybe Professor Roth will invite us to drinks in Michigan at some point. I would fly. I would fly to Michigan and come meet you all in person. I would love to do it. I miss the in-person connection. So again, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, we've been at this for a while. I wonder if people have further, if there are any further questions from folks who have now an opportunity to ask them. That this would be good to get one more shot at that. But otherwise, we can have people go around and say anything that they felt left unsaid in this panel. Anybody?
Well, I'm just going to say I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed hearing from my fellow lawyers. And Jason, I don't disagree with you. So I hope you didn't think I was, I think you were spot on with your criticism. Law school is tough. I'm going to tell you, my first year of law school, I was lost because I came thinking that it was going to be about the discussion of justice and those high-minded ideas. I thought, we'd be talking about the Constitution and the 14th Amendment and issues of equity and things of that nature. And I came and it was just about, I had classmates basically ask the professor what I need to write on the test to get an A because they wanted to get a job at a big law firm. And I was despondent because I thought I was going to go and have these discussions with like-minded people. So my first semester of law school was tough. And what you're going to find out is your first semester of law school sort of shapes your first 2 years of your law career. Because, first semester, that's where you make law review and all the big firms take all the people from law review and, you get kind of despondent and you go, well, dang, I just blew my whole law career from the first semester. Like, what's the rest of the 2.5 years for? And, and I had somebody say, well, why'd you go to law school? Did you go to law school for the money or you go to law school because you wanted to be a lawyer? And that kind of clicked. And then law school became easy for me because I had my purpose again. I had my purpose that, I knew, and I'm first generation lawyer. There's never been a lawyer in my family. Out of my male cousins, I'm the only one of two with a bachelor degree. So I'm the only person in my family ever, have, been a judge. So I'm a lot of firsts. And so I really rediscovered why I wanted to be a lawyer. It was to help people who look like me, who came from my neighborhood, who never had access to a lawyer, who didn't, know the law and got taken advantage a lot. And that's what I made it my mission. I represented people who look like me. And when I say look like me, I just don't mean racially, but economically. I represented a lot of people who, couldn't afford a rent. And I gave them the best I could. And I think Mira said something that was spot on, that a lot of people that are doing harm because they're doing it for the wrong reason and they're not happy. And they're just kind of, just blind, they're just saying what they think needs to be said, but they don't say it with any integrity or any passion. So do it for the right reasons. And I think Jason is 100% right when I heard Jason say, do it for the right reasons. Because if you do it because you think is what you should do, or you think it's cool, or you think you're going to make a lot of money, it's not going to fulfill you. It's not. Whatever it is, whatever your passion is, do it. Because if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Very good. Other thoughts from our panelists?
Yeah, I don't think anybody can top Wesley, but it's, I think Jocelyn asked that last question to Myrna, like the industry is not perfect, it's flawed. We have flawed systems that we work within, but if you have a passion for it, you can really learn it, get into it, understand why it's working the way it's working, so that you can then affect the change that you want to see in it. And that applies to a lot of different areas. And, I found in law school, I got there and there were a lot of things I was really bad at. I was good at writing and I loved writing, and that, helped me excel when I, first became a lawyer, because that's really where my passion was. I was terrible at contracts and I still am terrible at contracts. I don't want to see one, don't put one in front of me. I let the other lawyers that I work with that are really smart about that do that stuff. Like, it's okay not to be good at everything either. Just find what suits you and what you enjoy. And that's hard when you're in it to know that. And that's a lot of years of experience talking. But if I can tell anybody something, that's okay. And just, follow your heart, and you'll be good at that. And it's okay if you get a C in that class. It's not going to ruin your life, I promise, even if you felt like it was at the time.
Jason, Anna? Anything further?
Yeah, no, I thought those were some really good points there. Anna, sorry, did you want to go ahead? Okay. A great point that you just raised, Amy, was that if you don't do well in a law school class, then that doesn't mean much, right? Because every law school class, I mean, is its own area and career of law. And so when you take that class, you're just taking a really just a mile high up overview of what that practice of law actually entails, or what is actually involved in that area of law. I think the same thing is true for law. So once you get out of law, if you don't like what you're doing, I mean, you have all of those skills to teach yourself another area of law and to go into something else. And so you've heard people who are, prosecutors or defense attorneys or corporate lawyers or judges, right? And you could, go into sports law or medicine or whatever you want to, right? And so, I hope I didn't scare you away from the practice of law, just more so give you the opposite side to think about a little bit. And, it is definitely rewarding. I did enjoy it while I practiced it. And, if my current career didn't work out, I probably would go back to it and maybe just choose a different area of law, right? So take that in consideration.
Anna, I think you're gonna get the last word.
All right. Oh God. Okay. So I'll answer Jocelyn's question as well, because I'm also a public defender, and I completely disagree with the system that I work in. And it's hard because I know myself and like other attorneys that I work with, there's different, when you go into public defense, there's different types, are you like an activist lawyer? Are you more like a movement lawyer? Like there's different types. And I don't know what kind I am yet, to be honest, but I know like, I get very, and I don't have an anger problem. My brother thinks I do, but I definitely don't. But I get sometimes just very angry with the system. And, I was sending an email earlier today, I filed something to bring a cop into court, which is something I've never done ever, to get a client's gun back. And it's just the weirdest thing in the world that like, I don't like guns, but here I am like, give me my client's gun back, dang it. Like you had no right to take it. Like that's where I'm at. And it's, I think, the thing for me at least, and I'm sure this is across the board for any type of law you practice, you're going to have days, I mean, not even any type of law, any career, anything you're doing, you're going to have days where you like absolutely dread and hate, and you're just like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And then for me, when I have those days where like everything is going wrong, my clients are sitting in jail, it just everything bad is happening. It really is just the work, like the client work and the love that I have for the job that keeps me going. Because, I would be nothing without my clients. Like that's, when I started this career, it is my like pleasure, my honor, to represent the people I represent. And that's what I tell them. Like when I fire off my like closing letters and emails to them, it's been a pleasure representing you because it's true. And so if I didn't have that, I genuinely can't see myself practicing any other type of law. Talk to me in 5 years, who knows? But as of right now, there's nothing that like brings me more joy, even though I'm working in this awful, awful, awful system. But there's nothing that brings me more joy than my clients. And, even if, I'm not a miracle worker, I tell them that all the time. I don't have a magic wand that can like make their charges go away or get them out of jail. But if I can make their situation even like a little bit better, I've done my job. I've done a good job. If I can, make it less scary for them. And like I said, I think that's kind of across the board, even if you're not representing like, human clients, corporations, entities, companies, whatever it may be. If you don't love what you're doing, what are you doing then? So yeah, I'm done.
All right. Well, I can't thank enough all of our speakers this evening who have taken a huge chunk of their evening to participate in all of this. And I can't tell you how proud I am of all of you. And so it's really great to see you all. I hope you might hang out for a few minutes afterwards to catch up for a minute. But on behalf of the political science department, and I'm sure on behalf of the student organizations as well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you guys so much. I know that everyone who was here really enjoyed it, and like they got a lot of questions answered, or you guys opened their eyes to something that we didn't know about being an undergraduate. But I thank you guys so much for your time as well.
All right. Turn off the recording here.